One to the policy meeting. Oops. In presence is Director Alt and then me, Director Connor. And this is our policy meeting for November 22nd. First, we will discuss new policies. Thank you for joining us tonight. The first one will be Policy 208, Development, Adoption, and Implementation of Policies. And Dr. Teresa Battle, our superintendent, will be the speaker on that.
Thank you, Director Connor. So 208 is a Minnesota School Boards Association update of annual review policies. There has been some removal of redundant text and some added punctuation and some strike-throughs. So first, under 3C, there's a comma after student in the first sentence. And then 4B, strike-through for adopted policy. And then if you go to section 5, added just to strengthen the sentence, these guidelines and directives, and then another comma. And then D, going from the 5 years to every 3 years for review, and it's a third of the policies annually. Strike-throughs for some policies, 514, 522, for the addition of 722, and a strike-through of 208. Under E, under 4, a strike-through for action taken and will. And then under 4, Section A is a strike-through because it is set forth in the purpose at the beginning of the policy. And also D and E. D is captured in 3A in a different way. And then E is also stricken above. So that's 208 changes.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that, Dr. Alt?
Yes, I do. Let's see. Oh, bottom of 208.2. Just wondering why bullying prohibition was removed.
So that came from MSBA. Yeah, not sure why they, I think, didn't we rename that 514? But then they don't reference it again.
Yeah. Is there?
So it's moving from the annual and it's going to the 3-year.
No, I get that.
Right.
I get that. But so there's nothing behind the recommendation from you and staff in terms of removing those policies. Got it. I guess either I would prefer to keep bullying prohibition and student sex non-discrimination in the policy, or find out why they were removed.
Okay.
I don't know, Director Connor, if you...
That sounds fine, because, I mean, yeah, if we want to know the reasoning behind it, that's fine.
Yeah. And then a suggestion, and you know, this was back when I was reviewing it, and so there might be 2 different options that we have. One is, do we want to hold on implementing, on bringing this policy forward and the next policy forward until the new board members are sworn in January, so that it helps to ground their work? That's one thought. The other thought that just came to mind is just get them approved right now and then make sure during our, you know, there's some sort of workshop or board level conversation to help ground our new board as we have, you know, a new board member joining us in January.
My suggestion is that we just go ahead and review it now, or take action on it now, and then go over it with them.
Okay, that works for me. And
That's it? Okay. And I did refresh mine and I got it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that was crazy. Okay. Okay, now we will go to policy 209, Code of Ethics, and see its revisions.
Another Minnesota School Boards Association change, very minor changes, just updating the references. If you look under legal references, there was a change in the name of that Minnesota statute. It's the General Powers of Independent School Districts. And then the next statute, Boards of Independent School Districts, is the new title. And then cross-references, none. They're doing away with their service manuals.
Any discussion or comments on that policy?
None here.
Oh, this is 209. Okay, so can this, since it's just references, can this be consent? We didn't make any other changes? Okay, so policy 209. Let's read that down. Okay. Okay, and then moving on to, bear with me, sorry. Moving on to policy 416, drug and alcohol testing.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Bringing to you, the policies that I'll be bringing you tonight are all MSBA recommendations. As I reviewed them, there was nothing that I felt that I was going to add to these. Most of the updates, well, I'll start with 416. The updates are to address both law. There's some clarification items. Also, we added language to address non-intoxicating cannabinoids or edible cannabinoid products. So that was included within this. A lot of the language that you do see here actually addresses bus drivers and transportation. Did follow up with David Lake just to make sure that they understand and follow policies. MSBA, again, pushes out the policies for Lakeville, all of the different districts in which Mitty and Sons is already dealing with, so they're already incorporating those, as well as many of these guidelines are both state and federal, and so they are on the hook to make sure that they're following that as well. And we do partner with them and make sure that these are in compliance as well. So, yeah, that's what I have for that, for 416.
Any comments or questions on 416 rather, I'm sorry?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and, moving on to 417.
417, then, after we're done with the testing, then we move into the chemical use or abuse. And again, these are MSBA recommendations. I'm not adding to those. We do have clarification through rewording in different sections, paraphrasing in different ways. Also, some added language around process is included a little bit later in the policy as far as the number of days, implementation and follow through as far as record retention along those lines.
Okay, Director, any comments or questions?
Yes. Under Roman numeral 3 definitions, B. Wait, maybe it wasn't. Well, scroll down. Okay. Controlled substances. What about huffing, fumes? You know, I mean, those are using vapors. Yeah. I don't, maybe I missed it when I read it, but it doesn't seem like household chemicals are included in this. Or whatever, I don't know. Whatever it is that might be inhaled that is not intended to be inhaled. Or ingested?
I would want to go back and take another look at that. Part of the thing is it's like we need to be careful, so if somebody brings onto the premise Pine Sol. They have a small bottle of Pine Sol, whatever, just for the example.
Yeah.
Well, just them having the household chemical of Pine Sol on them doesn't mean it's something in which triggers our policy.
Right, right.
Because it's not a controlled substance, too. I think it's.
It's not a controlled substance, and I guess maybe is there a way to get at that for the health of the students? That, yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's no longer a thing, maybe, I don't know.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that. I think where we're getting at it is if there is the belief or suspicion that a student is chemically abusing or needing support.
Yep.
That's when triggers are occurring. But to kind of outline that you can't, then we're into, quite frankly, we could be into almost any type of an item
Gotcha.
in trying to list within the
So
policy.
it's covered in this policy.
It would be covered in the sense of misusing or the student in having needs. That's where you start getting in the process and having the teams and identifying. It looks like you have a substance abuse issue, and probably that's the best way of phrasing,
Yep.
a substance
Yes.
abuse. Whatever
Yeah.
that substance is that you're misusing,
Yep.
that's when the supports would start triggering and kicking in for that individual.
Awesome. And then another question. I was surprised to see the stat team removed.
They're rephrasing that terminology.
Yep.
They still want districts to have support and in place. They're just not calling it a stat team as such. And a lot of the language that ends up into this probably is reflecting directly updates to statute. So
Got it. So there, it's kind of embedded in the statute, so it wouldn't be explicitly called out in
in that
policy.
type of a format.
Got
Again,
it.
instead of it being labeled as this is how you do this, make sure you have a team that's there to support students, again, with substance
To
abuse.
provide these different supports. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Any other questions or comments then? Okay. Okay, moving on to 418, drug-free workplace and drug-free school. And our speaker will be Dr. Chris Beaumont, Assistant Superintendent.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
I get to present for your consideration 418 drug-free workplace and drug-free school. And this also is aligning to MSBA language. We didn't add any additional language or wording. As you can see, there are a number of changes or just additional pieces of information. I think that reflects, as Director Sovine mentioned, changes to state and federal statute around marijuana in particular, but also just to reflect different ways people might be consuming controlled substances, the increased definitions, as well as some of those support features and enforcement, increased language to or just clarified language around adding school-based mental health services or really looking at some of the root causes for abuse on the student or staffs.
And that's it?
Yes.
Okay. I just have one comment. This seems to kind of cover what you were mentioning about other, let's see, which, it's H,
Yes.
toxic substances includes, and then it has a list of them, and then how they can affect the nervous system. So that kind of, what you were talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, and I missed this one in my review, so that's why I didn't see it, so thank you for calling that out.
Oh, no, I just,
One question I had, just broadly, how do I want to say this? So do we expect that probably more policies will be coming forward are we where we need to be in terms of cannabis and the changes that have happened at state, or are we expecting that there may be continued changes over time. Do you have a sense for that?
I think the legislature may have some additional legislation this session, and then we would have to make some changes.
But this set,
Because-
we're fine for where the legislature is at this point.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay.
And-
Yeah, and as you know, cities have had to do a deep review about several of their policies and how to react to.
Yep.
So yes, we are comfortable
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
this time.
Yeah, and even if there is a move as far as legalization, that doesn't necessarily mean that that will impact workplaces or schools.
Oh, yeah, no, well, that's, I mean, it's a balancing act, and there are certain rules that schools
Just for
follow.
safety.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records. Should be student records, but anyway, pupil records. And that is, yeah, Stacy Soline.
Again, bringing forward MSBA language and their proposals. I'm not adding anything to this. Summary is just clarification through rewording in a number of different sections. Also, the addition of education support services data, and that addition would reflect updates to Minnesota statute 1346 is what they're calling out. That's all I have.
Do you like the word pupil? I guess that seems, since we use student in so many other policies, it just seems weird that they put pupil records instead of student records. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why if it's just
I wonder
a
if it's
term
in
that's never been looked
statute.
at, if there's a statute that
mean-
relates to pupil.
Yeah, because
I wonder if
most,
it's still in statute that way.
oh, okay, because I know most of the language always refers to student. Just sounds weird to say, it just sounds old to say pupil, but,
If it's in statute and it's about protection and privacy of records, we wouldn't want to mess with it. But it's a good question.
Yeah, your purpose statement might be a little bit redundant. I mean, kind of the dissemination of student records and the protection of the privacy rights of students as provided in federal, I mean, you could. I think part of that is style. So you wanted to move it over, we definitely can explore that and make sure that that wouldn't be in conflict of anything.
Well, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Connor, but it's more the term pupil that's being used, not necessarily reworking the
No,
the purpose, no.
right. And my point to it is if you would prefer the word student, we can investigate that a little bit more. If that it has a specific meaning that is being called out, or if it's just style, so that.
if I remember in other policies, when they give the definition of student, it's the same thing. It's just, like you said, style.
Yep. So
It just seems
we can bring that one back if
more,
you'd like me to look at that.
just more consistent to say student to me. I mean, I know it's not a big deal, so.
Yep.
If you'd like them to investigate, I support that.
Okay. Is that okay?
That's fine with me.
All right. All right, we'll put that under review then. Okay, and any other comments or questions? Okay. Let me move on to 603, curriculum development.
So Directors Alt and Connor were unable to present 603 and 604 tonight. Director Oftedal had to leave
Oh, okay.
and is unable to be here tonight. So we'll move that forward to the next policy meeting, those two.
Oh, okay. Just making a note here. Okay, so 708 then, transportation of non-public school students.
Okay. Again, bringing forward the MSBA proposal. Really what it comes down to are just some updates and clarification in their language. Also, this policy and 709 also did check with Director Lake as far as our coordination with Smitty and Sons, and we are in compliance with these for both of these as well.
And everything says students. Okay, okay. And comments or questions?
Not for 708.
Uh-oh. Skipping right to 721.
But it's interesting, this policy, it uses
You mean
students
709.
before it, but the legal reference, the first one is provision of pupil
Oh,
support services, so. Okay,
Statute has a funny way of
Yeah.
working.
yes.
Okay, then, so. All right, okay, on to 709, student transportation safety policy.
Sure. 709, I am bringing again the recommendation from MSBA, have not added anything to this. It does provide updates, both clarification and the definition of serious traffic violations. I will point out that I do find some of the information in here as fairly specific as far as the first, secondary, and third offenses. I would anticipate that that might be open to dialogue, but that is what was proposed by MSBA.
Comments or questions?
I didn't have questions about the first, second, and third, but one that I did have, just one question. One and a second related one. Page 709-16, Roman numeral 10, safety director. I guess the question is, and I may know I think I might know the answer to this, but maybe not. Usually policy spells out at least the title and the contact information for that person. Will this be coming forward? Do we not have that information to include in the policy yet?
We would include that as we move forward. It'd be David Lake is who that would refer to.
And that's currently how it is. Okay.
Yep.
So I would say
Sure.
I would love to see that listed just so people know who to
Yep.
contact.
Yep, we will include that. The last line there is the name, address, telephone number of the school transportation safety director on file in the school district office, but we can also provide it.
That'd be
Call
great.
that out.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that was all that I had.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Excuse me. Policy 721, uniform grant guidance policy regarding federal revenue sources. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm looking at too many things at once. Sorry.
Yep. So 721 is just an update, again, on the use of federal funds. A lot of times we will refer to this as the different regulations under GASB. What they're doing is updating the micro purchase limit up to $10,000 and setting that in place. Micro purchases would be for, again, we're talking about federal funds. So micro purchases would be anything that is either $10,000 or over, or if you're buying the same item multiple times, that may be under $10,000, but as you go through and you purchase these items throughout the fiscal year, where it actually exceeds $10,000, then we need to make sure that we are providing an RFP for that process. That's really what that kind of comes down to.
Interesting.
So the micro purchases are lots of little things that add up to, lots of Skittles that add up to the bag of Skittles. Those are expensive Skittles.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, just on the Skittles question, staying with that analogy, I imagine it's fairly predictable which types of purchases we might be making as a district that would reach that level over the year?
Typically,
Yeah.
yes. So it may be consumables in that sense, that if we're choosing to use federal funds, it's like, okay, you know, off the top of my head, the two areas that more than likely it would come from would either be through special ed or possibly through our title funds. Those are your primary federal funds.
Okay.
So, you know, on the front end, for title, we have a grant proposal that gets approved and shows what our budget would be on the front end with that. So that, yes, that should be very predictable.
Yep.
In special ed, that can vary a little bit. But again, it would be an idea that to protect our maintenance of effort, and we're going to use federal funds on something, this is the purchase in
Yep.
which we're going to make. So therefore, we would plan that out in advance.
Okay, thank you.
But those would be your primary areas where we would see that.
It just seemed very specific, and I
I-
couldn't.
Yes.
Of course.
The GASB rules are becoming very specific, so, yes.
Thank you.
I just have a question. Do we ever get any federal funds for our transportation? Is that always just state and district and city?
We get reimbursed for special ed transportation through the state.
Right.
Federal funds
I know
come
it's
from
state. And then,
the state.
I
They
think
get a
everything
federal
comes
allocation?
through the state.
Just
But
the
I
state?
I will check
Yeah,
on
for
that. I will
because I,
verify that. I
that's
think
what I
everything
thought, but then
comes-
I was wondering about federal, because that would be a good, I mean, you know, if we did get some money from federal for that instead of just state, that could be over 10,000 possibly for the
Yeah.
year, for the whole school year.
The biggest thing that we received recently is all of our ESSER funds, that are federal funds. So that type of stuff, we also have to be careful with on how we're using that. But that, again, one-time money and moving forward. Not to keep bringing it up with the piece, but that's also part of the finding that was within the audit. When we switched something from a state-funded and we switched it over trying to use our ESSER funds, in a sense, we violated by not doing the RFP, just by
RFP.
switching it out. So,
Okay.
I will check on the transportation. I have a feeling, I think the majority of that is all state-funded.
State, that's fine, because it doesn't have to do with this policy in particular, so
Yep.
that's fine. I was just wondering if you knew. It's nothing you have to check into for this policy. Okay, any other questions or comments?
No?
Okay. All right, so then review. Okay. So for policy 208, review and action.
Coming back?
Coming back,
Find
because
out
we
if,
have to do action on that
Why
one.
they removed it.
Why did they remove the
Moved
policy? It's going to
two
come back to the
policies.
policy.
Right.
So I'll bring it back next
Right.
month. Okay.
Is that what action means?
That's not action.
Oh,
No,
that's-
No, that's just coming back. Yep, return to committee.
Oh,
Turn
okay.
the committee.
All right, that's a different term then. Okay. 209? 209 is the only consent we have, I believe. And then,
I think it's first.
well, 46,
209?
yeah, that was the one that all they did was change references. Did I get that wrong? I
No,
can go back and look?
Nope, you're right. Yep,
Yep.
nope. that's
Okay, so that was always just the references, not
Yep.
anything in the actual policy.
correct.
Okay, and then 416 and 417 and 418 are all first readings. Okay, and then 515, we were going to do a review. You were going to get back to us on that, so return. And then 603 and 604, okay, we're moving to our next meeting. 708 is first reading. 709, we're going to have action, a return on that. And,
Return on that?
yeah, what was 709?
Just add the director name.
Oh,
Do you want to do new?
just, yeah, I think it can be first reading if we're just
Yeah.
adding a title.
Oh, that's.
Because we know who the person is.
David Lake.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
you're just doing the, okay, all right then, so then, what was it then, first reading?
First reading,
Yeah,
yep.
okay. And then the last one, 721, first reading also.
That one was just consent, but
You think? I don't know, it's got kind of a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah,
I
there's a lot
thought.
of gas fees, the 10,000.
it was statute, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
True.
I mean,
Board to know the
Okay, then let me just, yeah.
we could do first reading if you want.
Yeah, because there's a whole bunch of paragraphs of different stuff, but like you said, it is MSBA.
Statute, which, yeah,
Statutes
but
and
If you wanted to
a
be
lot of
first,
different
that's fine.
wording here, just tightening it up. Let me just look over it again. Oh, okay. Let's do consent then.
We got two.
721, consent. All right. Okay, so that, I know, that's amazing. Okay, so that concludes our policy meeting for November 22nd. 5:31 is the time. Thank you all. Meeting is adjourned.